Welcome to North Community High School. My name is Maisa Lee again, and I am the Vice President of the class of 2012. We are fortunate to have in our midst today Andrew Young, a former U.S. Ambassador, United States Congressman, Mayor of Atlanta, and ordained minister. Ambassador Young brings a unique perspective formed by his wealth of experience and national and global leadership to his focus of the challenges of this generation. He confronted the segregation of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and was a trailblazer of the civil rights movement. Ambassador Young served as a strategist and negotiator during the civil rights campaigns in Birmingham and Selma that resulted in the passage of Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He was elected to the U.S. Congress in 1972 and helped Jimmy Carter win the Democratic nomination and election of presidency. In 1977, President Carter appointed him to serve as U.S. Ambassador of the United Nations, where he negotiated an end to the white minority rule in Namibia and Zimbabwe and brought Carter's emphasis on human rights to international diplomacy. As mayor of Atlanta, Ambassador Young led the effort to bring the Centennial Olympic Games to Atlanta and as co-chair of the Atlanta Olympic Committee. He was awarded the Olympic Order, the highest award of the Olympic movement. Ambassador Young has received honorary degrees from more than 60 universities and colleges in the U.S. and abroad. The President Jimmy Carter awarded him the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and France awarded him the Legion d'Honneur, the greatest civilian honor in each nation. President Bill Clinton appointed him the founding chair of the Southern American Enterprise Development Fund. He serves on a number of boards, including the Martin Luther King Center for Nonviolent Social Change, Rock Gold, the United Nations Foundation, the Atlantic Falcons, and the Andrew Young School for Policy Studies at Georgia State University. He is the author of 2 books, A Way Out of No Way and An Easy Burden. Ambassador Young and his wife, Carolyn McLean Young, live in Atlanta. He is the father of 4 and a grandfather of 6. Students, please join me in welcoming Ambassador Andrew Young to Minneapolis.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to tell you 3 quick stories, and then I'll listen to talk about anything you want me to talk about. I see at least 2 microphones here, so think about what you want me to talk about. I have 2 adopted children. They don't know I adopted them, but I adopted them. One was a little girl who was born when her mother was 12 years old. And when I met her, she was about 16 and just getting ready to start high school. Well, in middle school. But anyway, wherever it was. She was working with us at the YMCA, and she's a very bright kid. And I didn't know this about her family. And I said, "How did you get so smart?" And she said, "I just realized that the only way I was going to make it was to be smart." And then I found out from the secretary of the Y about the fact that she was born when her mother was 12, and that she had 5 sisters and 1 brother. And the mother was a single mother taking care of all of them. And I said, "How do your little sisters do in school?" She said, "I got them all studying. They're all smart. The little boy is just spoiled, and he hadn't gotten it yet. But," he said, we got to be smart to make it." Well, she finished high school, one of the high schools in Atlanta that we didn't consider very good high school. Mainly, they didn't consider it good high school because it was mostly poor people. But she got a 4-year scholarship, $57,000 a year at Georgetown University. And she did it on the basis of her studying. And when she got the scholarship, she didn't have any clothes to wear up north and no shoes. And so my wife sort of just said, look, when we take our grandchildren shopping, you come and go with us. And so she got dressed up. She's just finishing her second year at Georgetown. And she's got a 3.8 average. And I asked her, I said, how are your little brother and sister doing? She said, they all making A's. And then her mother was working for a nursing home as a nurse's aide. And when they heard that her daughter had gotten a scholarship to Georgetown University for $57,000, covering everything practically, they said, well, you must be smart too. So they gave her mother a little time off, and she's going to Georgia Perimeter College, and she's making all A's. You know, I mean, but it was one student in the family who understood the connection between learning and living, and that you could not make excuses for the problems that you were born with. Those problems had to become your stepping stones to opportunity. The other one was kind of privileged. He was a sort of mama's boy. He had 4 big brothers, and they were all smart. And I met him when he was about 10 years old, and back then he had a big afro. And I walked into his school, sort of like this, middle school, and he was fidgeting or something, and I tapped him on the back of the head. And I said, you got your hair together, I hope you got your head together. And he poked his mouth out and went home and told his mama that I had hit him upside the head. And she said, do you know who that was? She said, no. She said, he's the mayor of Atlanta. And this little boy, 10 years old, decided, well, if he can be the mayor of Atlanta, I can be the mayor of Atlanta. Well, I didn't see him anymore until he was 19. And he was then a student at Howard University. And he was running for the student government seat on the board. And he had a strange platform, because Howard is a very bougie, middle-class school. And he was running on a platform that Howard students are too privileged. They have it too easy, and they don't do enough for other people. So he challenged the student body to personally add $15 a quarter to their tuition and create their own student foundation to help students who needed help. And I said, I don't know whether you're going to win on that platform at Howard. When I was at Howard, there wasn't nobody concerned about anything but themselves. But he won. And I told him then, I said, you know, I don't know what you did, but you got something. And you need to come on back to Atlanta and run for something. And I'll help you. Because in about 20 years, we're going to need a mayor like you. Well, 2 years ago, when he was just before he turned 40, we elected him the mayor of Atlanta. And I got to run back tomorrow morning because he has invited all of the black mayors from all over the country, and in fact, from Africa and the Caribbean too. And he's hosting them in Atlanta, and he wants me to be the keynote speaker. Now, those are 2 extraordinary success stories. He happened to be in the Georgia State Senate when there was a young, funny-looking kid from Illinois who was in the Illinois State Senate. So he and Barack Obama got to know each other before anybody else knew him. So he can walk in and out of the White House like I don't know what. Because you always still use the term cut buddies? That's what we used to call it. Homeboys, I don't know what it is, but they went through it before either of them got to be important, so they're very close. And so one of the reasons we're bringing all of these mayors into Atlanta is to help them realize the importance of this election and what the issues are that are gonna, run the world. Now, the third story I want to tell you is about the sorriest little trifling rascal I know. He couldn't pay attention in elementary school or high school. He got put out of elementary school in the 3rd grade, then got put out of high school a couple of times. And he wasn't ever doing anything that bad, but he just couldn't keep still. And he went to college because his parents could afford to send him. And in fact, they had to pull some strings to get him in, I believe. But just as he was about to flunk out of college, he ran into the boy that he got put out of school with in 3rd grade. He was working as a lifeguard at a swimming pool. And this guy came in and almost drowned because he was high on heroin. But when they pulled him out, he said, "You don't remember me, do you?" I said, "No, who are you? Where were?" He said, "We got put out of school together, Belina C. Jones School in 3rd grade." And then I remembered, oh my Lord, we were playing with an ice pick in the back of the room. Mumbly pig. They don't do that anymore. You don't even have ice picks, because you all got refrigerators. Back then, we used to have to buy ice and put it in an ice box. But I was trying to decide whether I was going to go to the Army or what I was going to do, because I had another year in college, but I was closer to flunking out than I was to graduating. And this junkie sat there and said, "Look, I'm just as smart as you. But I couldn't get back into school after 3rd grade." Said, "Your mama got you back in the next day." Said, "But my mama was working as a maid for $1 a day plus car fare. And she couldn't take time off to see about me." And so I said, "Where you been?" She said, "I've been in and out of every reform school and penitentiary in the state of Louisiana." And he said, "You ought to be ashamed of yourself." He said, "If I had the opportunities you have had, I would be somebody. You better get yourself together and try to do something with your life." And it put me in such a shame that I kind of bucked up and graduated. But I decided to the Lord and my mom and half a dozen other people, "Lord, if you just give me one more chance. I've screwed it up so far, but I'm going to do better if you just get me through this time one more time." Well, I decided that I decided that God had put everybody on this earth for some purpose. And I was running around trying to figure out what I wanted to be. It didn't matter what I wanted to be. I was asking the wrong question. The question is, what did God put me on this earth for? And I decided that I was going to try to find that out. What is the purpose of my life? And that's how I got to do all these things. I got to be, first of all, I got into graduate school. And God had to get me into graduate school because my grades were too bad. But I went in and audited a course. And I was doing all right in the course, and they said, "Well, you're a bright boy. If you take 3 courses, we'll give you a scholarship." And then they got my grades from Howard, and they said, "Well, you are blessed and lucky, because if we'd gotten your grades before we knew you, you never would have gotten in here. But you're doing all right. Point. At the point when I took the leadership to go in, and I wasn't accepted, I just went to the dean of the school and said, can I sit in and learn something, because I don't know anything. And he was so impressed with that that he let me in. And next thing you know, he'd given me a scholarship before he realized that I wasn't supposed to be that smart. And I tell you those three stories because I don't know what your predicament is. I don't know what you're thinking about. But I want you to do yourself a favor. I want you to decide this summer that you're going to start trying to figure out what you were put on this earth for. Because everybody was put on this earth for some purpose. God don't waste talent. He doesn't waste opportunity. And the fact that you were born or that you live in the United States of America, that you have gotten to high school already. They talk about how we're not as smart as the Japanese, or we're not as smart as the Chinese, or we're not as smart as anybody, they say. That's a lot of crap. We have more going for us as average, ordinary Americans, because you know more than you think you know. The very fact that you've been in this kind of, I mean, we got the United Nations right in here. See, really, all y'all look like you come from somewhere else in the world. Your parents or grandparents did. And I bet you if we ever got down to writing down where our grandparents were supposed to be from, we'd have 150 countries represented in this room. That means you have grown up understanding more than 100 cultures. Japan, you can be a brilliant in Japan, but you don't know how to, you don't know anything but Japanese. When you go to school in America, you get to know the world. And American students are going to have to lead the world. Not because we're the smartest, not because we work the hardest, but we have had the most experience with dealing with difference. I talked to a young man the other day. He was at Morehouse commencement in Atlanta. And I met him when he was a poor boy. And now he flew to Morehouse commencement from Zimbabwe in southern Africa in his own Gulfstream jet. And the little rascal is a billionaire. You know, I mean, and he was coming to Morehouse because he wants to send 100 students from Africa, 50 of them to Morehouse and 50 of them to Spelman. And he's going to pay for it himself. I said, how can you do that? I know you're rich. He said, well, when we started getting rich, we decided that we were blessed and that God had blessed us, and we needed to figure out how to pass on these blessings. So he said, we decided in the Bible when you glean the fields, we picked all the wheat in the fields, you had to leave some for the poor. And so we decided in a modern corporation, we had to leave something for the poor. We couldn't just make it all ourselves. So they took 2% of their earnings off the top before paying any expenses. And they designated that to the poor because they lived in Africa with a lot of poor people. They have 24,000 orphans that they care for. And they have 100 top students that they send to colleges all over the world, and now he's going to start sending them to Atlanta because he figures that is the place that he looks at in all his travels that can help them to make it, to come back to Africa and give leadership in their countries. So everybody has a pathway to success, but my pathway is not your pathway. When somebody says, I want to be a politician, I say, get a job. can't be a politician. I said, get a job, but decide you're going to be poor all your life. Because if you're a politician, you can't make any money. You got to stay poor. Or they'll accuse you of stealing and you won't last long. And so I said, get your job first. Find out how you can take care of yourself. And then if you do a good job on your job, somebody will ask you to run for something. But now, I've talked too much, but I've been so blessed. Not only did I get, into these schools, but I got to travel. And that's my only major regret, that I made a D in French. And if I had been able to speak French when I was working in Africa, I'd have really raised hell. In 2 languages, when you talk, how many of you speak more than 1 language? See, look at that. We got world leaders right here. See? Develop that. And because I kind of got on the path that I thought God was wanted me on, I ended up working with Martin Luther King. I ended up preaching in little country churches. I ended up getting sent to conferences all over the world. And I turned 80 years old last month. They were trying to figure out, thank you, but when they were trying to figure out how many countries I'd been to, and I said, I don't know. So they got the list out and they started calling them off. Turned out I'd been to 162 countries.
Wow.
You don't have a little over 200. And I've been blessed. See, and they said I had 60 honorary degrees. When they started counting them up, they counted up 126. Now, none of those schools would have let me in when I left high school. So all I'm saying is there's hope for all of you. And so let's hear your question.
Those who have been given cards to ask questions of the ambassador, please come forward. There are 2 microphones in the aisle. 3 or 4 here and 3 or 4 over there, please.